The morning fog clung low over Fort Resolute, a sprawling training base carved into the valley like an iron scar. Reveille had already echoed off the cold metal barracks, leaving behind a sharp, disciplined quiet. Rows of fresh recruits shuffled across the parade ground, boots thudding in uneven rhythm, breath turning to steam in the crisp dawn air. The atmosphere buzzed with the raw, nervous energy of newcomers trying to prove themselves. At the edge of the crowd walked one man, older, slower in stride, shoulders slightly slumped as if carrying decades the others could not see. His uniform was simple, unadorned, sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal a faded tattoo, a sequence of numbers barely visible, eroded by time. His name tag read Collins. He carried no weapon this morning, only a dented steel mug and a rolled-up set of base schematics tucked beneath his arm. He walked quietly through the younger trainees as though he were invisible. To them, he might as well have been. A few of the rookies snickered as he passed. "Yo, old-timer," one whispered to another, "looks like somebody's grandpa wandered into boot camp." Another pointed at his mug. "Probably can't even do 10 push-ups without that coffee keeping him alive." One trainee, broad-shouldered, full of bravado, stepped deliberately into Collins's path, forcing him to pause. "Careful, sir," he said mockingly, drawing out the word sir with a disrespectful grin. "You don't want to pull something. Let the young guys handle the real work." More laughs. Quick, sharp, eager. Collins only nodded once, stepped around the young man, and kept walking. No anger. No challenge. Not even a change in his breathing. His face remained unreadable, eyes calm and distant as though fixed on a horizon only he could see. But for a single second, barely noticeable, a flicker of emotion passed through him. Not hurt. Not fear. Memory. He reached the edge of the training field and stood alone beneath the battered flagpole, watching recruits struggle with morning drills. The rising sun caught the worn edges of his tattoo, illuminating the numbers like a whisper from another life. The recruits continued their jokes, unaware that the man they mocked had once commanded bases far beyond this valley. Unaware that silence was not weakness. It was discipline. And it was the last warning they would never hear. Collins lived in the quiet corners of Fort Resolute, slipping through its routines like a ghost who'd learned the rhythm of every corridor. He wasn't listed under combat units or leadership teams. Instead, his name appeared on rosters for logistics coordination, resource accountability, and base movements, roles that drew little admiration from the fiery energy of new trainees. Yet he handled those duties with a precision that bordered on reverence. Long after the barracks lights dimmed, he could be found alone in the operations office, sleeves rolled up, spectacles low on his nose, reviewing transport manifests and emergency rotation plans. The night guards often passed him quietly, offering respectful nods. They didn't mock him. They didn't dare. They had seen hints, small things the others missed. A perfectly arranged desk. A filing system so efficient it seemed engineered by someone who understood war at its deepest levels. A posture that, despite age, never slouched out of discipline, only weariness. Most recruits assumed he stayed in logistics because he wasn't fit for anything else. It was easier to mock than to imagine the truth. They laughed at his soft-spoken nature, at how he never raised his voice, never corrected them, never demanded space. But a few older NCOs, men with decades behind their hardened eyes, occasionally exchanged glances when Collins walked by. Not disrespect, recognition. As if they knew something unspoken, something sealed behind classified doors. One evening, as Collins placed his uniform jacket into his locker, a small, weathered photograph slipped from the inside pocket. He caught it before it hit the floor. The picture showed a group of soldiers in desert fatigues, faces blurred by sun, wind, and the years. Only one face remained clear, his own, younger, sharper, standing beside someone whose insignia had been intentionally scratched out. Beside the photo, Tucked deep in the metal corner of the locker was an old, decommissioned identification badge, its emblem faded but still unmistakably belonging to a command level far above anything trainees could imagine. A thin line across the plastic indicated a clearance strip once used for top-secret operations. Colin stared at it for a quiet moment, thumb resting over the insignia as if touching a memory. Then he closed the locker gently, as though closing a chapter he hoped would remain undisturbed. But the past, no matter how deeply buried, does not stay hidden forever. And soon, the trainees' mockery would collide with truths they were never prepared to face. By the end of the week, the new trainees had found a rhythm: wake, drill, complain, repeat. And somewhere in their growing confidence, mocking Collins became part of their routine. He never answered back, never scolded, never even flinched. His silence, ironically, emboldened them. During lunch in the mess hall, he sat at the far end of a metal table, quietly eating simple rations while reviewing a supply requisition. A pair of trainees slid in across from him, their voices deliberately loud. "Look at him," one said, nudging the other. "Man's reading paperwork at lunch. Bet he's never even fired a weapon." The other snorted. "Probably thinks logistics wins wars." A few nearby trainees chuckled. One even mimicked Collins's slow, measured way of turning a page. Through it all, Collins continued chewing quietly, eyes steady, a calmness so unwavering it irritated them more than if he had shouted. Later, during formation, another incident unfolded. As squads lined up, the young, broad-shouldered trainee from earlier, Reeves, stepped behind Collins and flicked a pebble at the back of his boot. The group snickered when Collins simply stepped forward without turning. "Hey, old man," Reeves whispered loudly, "try to keep up. We're soldiers here, not museum exhibits." A few NCOs glanced over but said nothing. Collins remained still, gaze fixed straight ahead. Only a faint tightening of his jaw suggested he had even heard. But something else caught one trainee's eye, a thin glimpse beneath Collins's sleeve as the wind shifted. The old tattoo they mocked wasn't random ink. The numbers weren't decorative. They were in a distinct sequence format only seen in specialized units, training groups none of these rookies were remotely close to qualifying for. "Hey, those numbers," one trainee murmured. "You ever seen a code like that?" Reeves waved it off. "Probably his birth date or something. Don't overthink it." But doubt flickered. The final incident happened in the motor pool. Collins was quietly redirecting vehicle keys to their proper racks, something the hurried trainees always mixed up, when a wrench clattered to the floor behind him. The younger soldiers pretended it slipped from their hands, but their smirks gave them away. "You organizing our tools now too?" a trainee called out. "What's next? Polishing boots?" Collins crouched, picked up the wrench, wiped the grease off, and set it neatly on the bench. Not a word. But as he stood, his movement was so smooth, so controlled, that it felt trained, military trained, but in a way none of them recognized. Another visual detail appeared: his dog tags, momentarily slipping into view, bore an insignia the trainees didn't understand, an encrypted marking reserved for top-tier command personnel. The signs were there. The warnings were there. But the trainees didn't see the truth. Not yet. The shift began quietly, like an unexpected change in the wind. On a grey Thursday morning, the base buzzed with unusual activity. Unmarked transports rolled through the main gate, engines low, headlights off. Soldiers straightened instinctively as a Special Forces inspection unit stepped out, men and women with hardened expressions, their uniforms carrying symbols rookies only whispered about. Leading them was Commander Hale, a legend spoken of in fragments across the military. Stories claimed he'd led operations in territories so classified they didn't appear on maps. His presence alone made seasoned officers stand taller. The trainees, excited to impress, rushed into their neat formation, chests puffed, boots polished. They whispered guesses about why elite forces were here. Not one of them suspected the real reason. Collins stood far off to the side, clipboard in hand, observing the unloading of equipment. Just another day in logistics, or so it appeared. The mockers noticed him immediately. There he is, Reeves smirked. Watch the Special Forces guys think he's a janitor. But Commander Hale's attention shifted unexpectedly. He paused mid-stride, eyes narrowing, not in confusion, but in recognition. His gaze landed directly on the quiet man near the supply crates, the one everyone else dismissed. One of Hale's officers whispered, "Sir?" "Something wrong?" Hale didn't answer. He watched Collins pick up a fallen crate strap with deliberate precision, securing it with a motion so smooth it resembled practiced battlefield efficiency rather than base labor. Then Hale saw the tattoo. When Collins bent slightly to inspect a crate label, the sequence of faded numbers appeared again. Hale stopped cold. Those numbers were not random. They were unit coordinates, identifiers for a task force that operated under deep classification. A task force he himself once served beside. He exhaled slowly. "So that's where you've been," he muttered under his breath. Nearby, the trainees launched into another low wave of mockery, unaware that one of the highest-ranking veterans on the base was now watching them mistreat a man whose past outweighed their entire careers. Hale's jaw tightened. He motioned for his team to hold position. "Don't intervene," he ordered quietly. "So?" "Not yet. I want to see how far this goes." His officers obeyed, though confusion lingered in their eyes. The tension shifted subtly. Collins continued his quiet work, unaware, or simply unconcerned, that someone from his past had finally found him. And the trainees, still blind to the storm gathering behind them, continued their careless laughter. It would not last long. The following morning, the base assembled for what was announced as a joint inspection and readiness demonstration. Trainees stood stiffly in formation, eager to impress the visiting Special Forces unit. Commander Hale and his officers observed from the reviewing platform, faces unreadable. Collins stood off to the side again, carrying a simple maintenance report and a toolkit. The trainee smirked as he passed. "Hey, old man," Reeves whispered, "don't trip in front of the Special Forces." But Hale's eyes tracked Collins's every movement. After the initial inspection, Commander Hale stepped forward. "We will begin with a live readiness drill. Any volunteer may demonstrate weapon assembly under timed conditions." Hands shot up across the formation, young soldiers hungry for recognition. Hale shook his head. "No volunteers. We'll choose someone." The trainee straightened, hopeful. Hale's gaze swept across the rows, then shifted away from them entirely. "You," he said calmly, pointing not at Reeves, not at any trainee, but at Collins, who had been quietly noting inventory on a clipboard. A ripple of laughter passed through the rookies. Reeves whispered, "This is gonna be good." Collins looked up, blinked once, then approached without hesitation. A disassembled rifle lay on a table. Hale nodded to his officer, who tied a black blindfold around Collins's eyes. The trainees exchanged confused glances. This was no simple test. Hale spoke firmly. "Assemble." For a moment, there was only silence. Then Collins's hands moved. Not fumbling. Not guessing. Flowing. Pieces clicked together with absolute memory. His fingers navigated the parts like old friends returning home. Springs snapped into place with soft, confident precision. The bolt carrier slid in smoothly, not a millimeter off target. The weapon came together in a sequence so fluid it looked less like assembly and more like choreography. The entire demonstration lasted 12 seconds. When Collins set the completed rifle on the table, blindfold still on, not a sound remained in the courtyard. Even the wind seemed to pause. Reeves' mouth fell open. A trainee whispered, "No way." The blindfold was removed. Commander Hale stepped forward and saluted first. His voice carried across the stunned ranks. "This man," Hale said, "is not your logistics clerk. He is Admiral Jonathan Collins, former commander of multiple classified joint bases across 3 theaters. The man whose strategies kept hundreds of us alive." Gasps broke through the formation. Hale continued, eyes firm. "If you knew what operations he led, you wouldn't have dared speak a word against him." Collins stood quietly, hands behind his back, expression unchanged. No pride. No anger. Just calm acceptance, like a soldier long accustomed to silence. The truth had finally surfaced. And the rookie's world shifted in an instant. Silence clung to the courtyard long after Hale's revelation. The trainees, once loud, confident, and careless, now stood frozen, their eyes locked on the man they had mocked for days. Collins didn't look at them. He simply waited, hands clasped behind him, posture calm and steady, as if none of this was extraordinary. But to everyone else, everything had changed. One by one, the trainees lowered their heads, shame coloring their faces. Reeves, who had been the loudest, stepped forward with trembling stiffness. His voice cracked when he tried to speak. "Sir, I didn't know." Collins only offered a faint nod, not accepting an apology, not rejecting it either. Just acknowledging the moment with the same quiet discipline that defined him. Then Commander Hale spoke firmly. "You didn't know because he never needed you to know. True leadership is not loud. True service does not demand recognition." He turned to Collins. "Admiral, permission to address the trainees." Collins gave a simple nod. Hale faced the rows of recruits. "Every lesson you're here to learn, discipline, humility, loyalty, he has lived. While you mocked him, he was still arranging your supplies, checking your safety gear, ensuring your training ran smoothly. He served you even when you disrespected him." A slow, powerful shift rippled through the formation. Then, led by Hale himself, the entire courtyard rose into a unified salute, hundreds of arms snapping upward in perfect, trembling precision. Collins didn't bask in it. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply returned the salute with quiet respect, then lowered his hand and murmured the only words he offered that entire day. "I'm just doing my job." There was no arrogance. No triumph. Just truth. And in that moment, the legend of Admiral Collins, silent guardian of multiple bases, unseen commander walking among the new generation, was born anew. Not through stories. Not through medals. Through humility witnessed firsthand. As the sun set behind Fort Resolute, the recruits dispersed quietly, no more laughter, no more careless pride. What remained was a lesson etched deeper than any drill or textbook could teach. They had seen firsthand that true strength does not demand attention, and true experience rarely announces itself. It walks softly, serves quietly, and steps forward only when duty calls. Admiral Collins returned to his modest office, filing reports as though nothing extraordinary had occurred. Yet every soldier who passed that doorway now straightened their posture. Respect wasn't forced. It was earned. And his silence had spoken louder than any rank ever could. Stories like his remind us that heroes walk among us, often unnoticed, always humble. For more powerful military stories, honor their memory by staying connected to the veterans' honor.